I just also want to remind my colleagues what one lawmaker texted to Mark Meadows after the January 6th attack, and let me quote, "Yesterday was a terrible day. We tried everything we could in our objection to the 6 states. I'm sorry that nothing worked," end quote. Now just think about that. A lawmaker is apologizing for failing to steal an election, for failing to overturn the will of the American people. I mean, is that really what our politics have become?
This sort of passed, I think, mostly unremarked upon today, given all of the other revelations from the committee. But when it comes to Mark Meadows, this seems very important. When it comes to Mark Meadows, we also today got a brand new, previously unheard assertion from his top deputy, Cassidy Hutchinson, about what Mark Meadows did around this time and why he did it. Now, we don't know why they held this piece of Cassidy Hutchinson testimony until today. We've heard so much from her in previous hearings, both on tape and in live testimony.
Okay, so Mark Meadows is Trump's former chief of staff. Meadows was one of Trump's closest advisors. Meadows was in the room with Trump. Meadows knew what Trump was thinking. Meadows knew what Trump was planning. Meadows was right there during all of it. And after the 2020 election, Meadows was part of Trump's inner circle, trying to overturn the election. Meadows was there. Meadows participated. Meadows knew about the schemes. But here's the thing that just came out, and it's absolutely wild. Meadows secretly cooperated with prosecutors. Meadows went to the special counsel, Jack Smith, and cut a deal. Meadows got immunity from prosecution. And in exchange for that immunity, Meadows told prosecutors exactly what Trump was doing. Meadows told prosecutors that Trump knew he lost the election. Meadows told prosecutors that Trump was being dishonest with the public. Meadows told prosecutors that the fraud claims were baseless. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
But it is possible that the investigators on the January 6th committee have held this back until today because it's so bad for Mark Meadows, because they are continuing a legal battle with Mark Meadows to try to get him to testify to their investigation. This clip about Mark Meadows today points to Mark Meadows' state of mind, his intentions behind what he was doing.
Think about what that means. Trump's own chief of staff, Trump's right-hand man, went to federal prosecutors and basically said Trump was lying to the American people about the election. Trump knew he lost. Trump knew the fraud claims were fake. Trump knew he was spreading lies. And Meadows told all of this to the prosecutors. Meadows gave them testimony. Meadows gave them documents. Meadows gave them a roadmap of how Trump tried to overturn the election. And Meadows did it to save himself. Meadows got immunity. Meadows protected himself from prosecution by cooperating with the people investigating Trump. And that's a huge deal because Meadows was in the room. Meadows knows what Trump said. Meadows knows what Trump did. Meadows knows whether Trump believed he lost or whether Trump was deliberately lying. And Meadows told all of that to the prosecutors. And then later, Trump issued a pardon for Meadows. Trump issued a broad pardon that covered all of Meadows' alleged conduct related to trying to overturn the 2020 election. Trump basically said, okay, you cooperated with prosecutors, you testified about what I was doing, but I'm going to pardon you anyway because you're on my team. Trump is rewarding Meadows for being part of his administration, even though Meadows backstabbed him by talking to the prosecutors. So you've got this situation where Meadows was Trump's closest aide. Meadows testified against Trump to save himself. Meadows told prosecutors that Trump was lying about the election, and then Trump pardoned him, and now nobody is going to be prosecuted. Nobody is going to face consequences. Trump's pardon basically wiped away any legal liability for Meadows or anyone else who was involved in trying to overturn the election. So the whole thing ends with Trump in power, Meadows unpunished, and the rule of law destroyed. Come on, this is absolutely wild, and it tells us everything about how Trump thinks about justice and accountability and the rule of law. Let me walk you through exactly what happened, okay? Let me walk you through what Meadows did and why it matters for understanding Trump and the 2020 election. Mark Meadows was Trump's White House chief of staff. Meadows was one of the most powerful people in the Trump administration. Meadows had direct access to Trump. Meadows knew Trump's thinking. Meadows knew what was happening behind the scenes. Meadows was in every meeting. Meadows knew everything. And after the 2020 election, Meadows was part of Trump's effort to overturn the results. Meadows was involved in the schemes. Meadows participated in the planning. Meadows was actively trying to help Trump stay in power despite losing the election. But then special counsel Jack Smith started investigating Trump's conduct after the election. Smith was looking at whether Trump violated the law by trying to overturn the election. Smith was gathering evidence. Smith was building a case. And at some point, Smith's team approached Meadows. Smith wanted to talk to Meadows. Smith wanted Meadows' testimony. Smith wanted Meadows to explain what Trump was doing and why. And Meadows faced a decision. Meadows could refuse to cooperate. Meadows could stay loyal to Trump. Meadows could refuse to talk to prosecutors. But that would mean Meadows might face prosecution himself. That would mean Meadows might go to prison. That would mean Meadows might be held accountable for his role in the schemes. Or Meadows could cut a deal with Smith. Meadows could cooperate with the prosecutors. Meadows could give testimony in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Meadows could protect himself by talking to the people investigating Trump. And that's what Meadows apparently decided to do. According to ABC News reporting from October 2023, Meadows was granted immunity by Jack Smith. Meadows secured immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying before a grand jury. Meadows provided testimony. Meadows gave the prosecutors information. Meadows handed over documents and texts. And Meadows told the prosecutors things that were deeply damaging to Trump. What did Meadows tell the prosecutors? According to the reporting, Meadows told prosecutors that Trump was being dishonest with the public about winning the 2020 election. Meadows told prosecutors that Trump knew he lost. Meadows said of the 2020 election, obviously we didn't win. Obviously. Meadows was saying it was obvious to everyone in the Trump administration that Trump lost the election. Trump lost. The election results were what they were. Trump didn't win. And yet Trump was going out and telling the public that he won. Trump was claiming the election was rigged. Trump was claiming there was fraud. Trump was lying to the American people, and Meadows knew it. Meadows was in the room. Meadows heard Trump say these things. And Meadows apparently told prosecutors that it was obvious Trump was lying. And Meadows also told prosecutors that he repeatedly warned Trump about this. Meadows said he told Trump after the election that the fraud claims were baseless. Meadows warned Trump that the claims of a stolen election were not true. Meadows apparently tried to convince Trump to accept the election results. Meadows apparently told Trump that the election was over and Trump lost. But Trump didn't listen. Trump refused to accept reality. Trump kept pushing the fraud claims. Trump kept insisting that the election was stolen. And Meadows knew better. Meadows knew the fraud claims were fake. But Meadows kept working with Trump anyway. Meadows kept participating in the schemes anyway. And then there's the January 6th stuff. According to reporting from ABC News, Meadows confirmed details about Trump's conduct on January 6th while the Capitol was being attacked. Meadows said that during the attack, Trump told House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy something like, "I guess these people are more upset than you are." Trump was saying that the mob attacking the Capitol was more upset than McCarthy. Trump was saying that the people committing violence on the steps of Congress cared more about the election than the Republican leadership. That tells you what Trump thought about the attack. That tells you that Trump understood the mob was angry about the election. That tells you Trump knew the people at the Capitol were there because of his lies about the election being stolen. So Meadows gave the prosecutors a window into Trump's thinking. Meadows gave them testimony about what Trump knew and what Trump said. Meadows gave them evidence that Trump knew the election claims were false. Meadows gave them a roadmap of how Trump was lying to the public while knowing the truth. Meadows gave them testimony from someone who was in the room, someone who heard Trump say these things, someone who knew what Trump was really thinking. That's incredibly damaging testimony for Trump. That's the kind of testimony that could result in a conviction if Trump went to trial. That's the kind of testimony that proves Trump's guilty mind. And Meadows got immunity for providing this testimony. Meadows protected himself by cooperating. Meadows made sure he couldn't be prosecuted. Meadows cut a deal with the prosecutors to save himself. And that's the thing about Meadows' conduct. Meadows was willing to sacrifice Trump to save himself. Meadows was willing to backstab Trump to avoid prosecution. Meadows was willing to tell the truth to the prosecutors, even though that truth implicated Trump in crimes. Meadows chose his own freedom over his loyalty to Trump, too. Now here's where it gets interesting. After Trump won the 2024 election and came back to power in 2025, Trump started issuing pardons. Trump pardoned all of his allies who had been involved in trying to overturn the 2020 election. Trump issued broad, sweeping pardons that covered Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, the fake electors, and many other people. Trump described these prosecutions as a grave national injustice. Trump said these people shouldn't have been prosecuted. Trump said that trying to overturn the election wasn't actually illegal. Trump said it was political persecution, and Trump wiped it all away with his pardon power. So Meadows got the best of both worlds. Meadows cooperated with prosecutors and got immunity. Meadows avoided prosecution and avoided trial. Meadows protected himself from criminal liability. And then later, Trump pardoned him anyway. So even though Meadows had immunity, even though Meadows was protected from prosecution, Trump also pardoned him just to make sure. Trump basically said, I'm wiping clean everything you did related to the election schemes. Trump basically said, the pardon covers anything related to trying to overturn the election. Now here's what's important about this situation. Trump is rewarding Meadows for backstabbing him. Trump found out that Meadows cooperated with prosecutors and told them damaging information about Trump. Trump found out that Meadows testified that Trump knew he lost the election. Trump found out that Meadows said Trump was lying to the public. And instead of punishing Meadows, instead of turning on Meadows like Trump usually does when someone crosses him, Trump is rewarding Meadows. Trump is protecting him. Trump is issuing a pardon that covers everything Meadows did. Why would Trump do that? Why would Trump pardon someone who cooperated against him? The answer is that Trump doesn't actually care about loyalty the way people think. Trump cares about power. Trump cares about protecting his allies from prosecution, because if his allies face prosecution, they might testify against him to save themselves. If his allies go to trial, they might go public with damaging information. If his allies are in prison, they might cooperate with other investigations. So Trump wants to keep his allies out of prison. Trump wants to make sure they're protected. Trump wants to make sure they don't cooperate against him or talk to the media or become liabilities. And the pardon does that. The pardon tells everyone in Trump's orbit that Trump will protect them. The pardon tells them that even if they testify against Trump, even if they cooperate with prosecutors, Trump will still pardon them. The pardon is Trump's way of saying you're safe, you're protected, I'm the president, and I can pardon you so you don't have to worry about prosecution. You don't have to worry about going to prison. You can do whatever you want and I'll protect you. That's the message of the pardon. That's what Trump is signaling to everyone in his administration and everyone in his political orbit. Okay, let me break this down into the three main points that matter about what Mark Meadows did and what Trump's pardon of Meadows means for accountability and the rule of law. First point, and this is documented by multiple news outlets. Mark Meadows was granted immunity by special counsel Jack Smith and testified before a grand jury that Trump was being dishonest about winning the 2020 election, that Meadows repeatedly warned Trump the fraud claims were baseless, and that Meadows told Trump, obviously we didn't win. This is real testimony. This is what someone who was in the room told federal prosecutors. This is direct evidence that Trump knew he lost the election and lied about it anyway. Second point, and this is equally important, Trump issued a broad federal pardon for Meadows in November 2025 that covers all conduct related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election, effectively wiping away any legal consequences for Meadows' involvement in the schemes, while also protecting all of Trump's other allies from prosecution. This is Trump using the pardon power to protect people who were involved in trying to overturn the election. This is Trump using the pardon power to prevent witnesses from being prosecuted and potentially cooperating further with investigations. This is Trump using the pardon power to consolidate loyalty around him. Third point, and this is the political angle, the combination of Meadows cooperating with prosecutors and then being pardoned by Trump demonstrates that Trump's pardon power is being used to protect loyalty networks and prevent accountability for election schemes, effectively rendering criminal prosecution impossible for anyone involved in Trump's inner circle. So you've got a situation where no one is going to be punished, no one is going to face consequences. Trump's allies are all protected by pardons, and the rule of law is destroyed in the process. Now let's talk about what this means for accountability and for the rule of law. The whole point of the criminal justice system is that people face consequences for breaking the law. The whole point of prosecutors is to investigate crimes and bring charges. The whole point of juries is to determine whether someone is guilty or innocent. And the whole point of judges is to sentence people if they're convicted. But none of that works if the president can just pardon everyone at the end. None of that works if the president That's what we're seeing with Trump's pardons. Trump is using the pardon power to protect his political interests. Trump is using the pardon power to prevent accountability for his allies. Trump is using the pardon power to render the criminal justice system meaningless. Trump is basically saying, the rule of law doesn't apply to me and my allies. We're above the law. We can do whatever we want because I have the pardon power, and I'll protect everyone from prosecution. Think about what Mark Meadows did. Meadows participated in schemes to overturn the 2020 election. Meadows was involved in efforts to pressure state officials. Meadows was involved in efforts to create fake electors. Meadows was part of Trump's inner circle trying to stay in power despite losing the election. That's serious criminal conduct. That's serious violations of law. And Meadows participated in it, but Meadows also cooperated with prosecutors to save himself. Meadows testified about Trump's conduct. Meadows gave evidence that Trump knew he lost. Meadows gave evidence that Trump was lying to the public. And then Trump pardoned him anyway. So Meadows faced no consequences. Meadows avoided prison. Meadows protected himself by cooperating and then protected himself again with a pardon. And everyone else in Trump's orbit sees this and understands the lesson. The lesson is that you can participate in schemes to overthrow the government, you can lie about elections, you can try to use law enforcement to stay in power, and you won't face any consequences as long as you're loyal to Trump. You can cooperate with prosecutors if you need to protect yourself, but Trump will pardon you anyway, so it doesn't matter. You're protected, you're in the inner circle, you're above the law. Here's why this is so dangerous for democracy. If the president can pardon anyone involved in trying to overthrow the government, then there's no check on the presidency. There's no consequence for abusing power. There's no reason for the president to follow the law. The president becomes a dictator. The president becomes above the law. And everyone in the president's orbit becomes above the law too. That's not a democracy. That's authoritarianism. And the fact that Meadows cooperated with prosecutors only to be pardoned later is especially problematic. It shows that the pardon power is being used not just to protect loyalty, but to prevent accountability. It shows that Trump is saying to everyone in his orbit, you can cooperate with prosecutors if you need to, but I'll protect you anyway. You can testify against me if you need to save yourself, but I'll pardon you. It shows that Trump is using the pardon power as a tool to keep people loyal and keep people quiet. If you're pardoned, you can't cooperate with other investigations. You can't testify against Trump. You're protected, but you're also bought off. You're protected in exchange for your silence. Think about what the proper outcome should have been. The proper outcome is that Trump would face prosecution for his conduct related to the 2020 election. Meadows would testify at Trump's trial about what Trump said and what Trump did. A jury would hear testimony from someone in the room with Trump. A jury would hear evidence that Trump knew he lost and lied about it. A jury would have all the information they needed to convict Trump, and Trump would face prison. That's the rule of law. That's how the system is supposed to work. But that's not what happened. Instead, Trump is using the pardon power to prevent that outcome. Trump is using the pardon power to protect Meadows from prosecution. Trump is using the pardon power to make sure Meadows can't testify against him at trial. Trump is using the pardon power to consolidate loyalty. Trump is using the pardon power to make sure no one faces consequences for trying to overturn the election. And here's what makes it even worse. Meadows is only one of many people being pardoned. Trump is pardoning Rudy Giuliani. Trump is pardoning Sidney Powell. Trump is pardoning John Eastman. Trump is pardoning the fake electors. Trump is pardoning everyone involved in the schemes. So everyone who participated is protected. Everyone who knew what Trump was doing is protected. Everyone who could testify against Trump is protected. And therefore, no one will ever be held accountable. No one will ever be prosecuted. No one will ever face trial. No one will ever be convicted. The rule of law is completely destroyed. So to bring it all together, Mark Meadows was Trump's chief of staff during the efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Meadows cooperated with special counsel Jack Smith and testified that Trump knew he lost the election, but kept lying about it anyway. Meadows was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony, and then Trump issued a federal pardon for Meadows that covered all conduct related to the election schemes. So Meadows faced no consequences, and neither will anyone else involved because Trump is using the pardon power to protect them all. This is what the end of the rule of law looks like. This is what happens when a president uses the pardon power to protect loyalty networks. This is what happens when the rule of law is subordinate to the president's political interests. No one faces accountability. No one faces consequences. The president and everyone in the president's orbit is above the law, and democracy dies. And here's what's most important to understand. This is just the beginning. Trump is just getting started with the pardons. Trump is going to pardon more people. Trump is going to protect everyone who was involved. Trump is going to make sure that anyone who was part of his efforts to stay in power or protect himself is protected from prosecution. And in the process, Trump is going to render the rule of law meaningless. Trump is going to show that being in the president's orbit is enough to be above the law. Trump is going to show that you can commit crimes as long as you're loyal to the president. And the consequences of this are serious. The consequences are that future presidents will do the same thing. Future presidents will abuse power knowing they won't face consequences. Future presidents will try to overturn elections knowing they can pardon anyone who cooperates with investigations. Future presidents will use the pardon power as a tool to maintain power and protect loyalty networks. The pardon power itself becomes a tool of authoritarianism rather than a power exercised in the interests of justice. Think about Mark Meadows standing outside the courthouse knowing he'll never be prosecuted. Think about Meadows never having to testify at a trial. Think about Meadows never having to face a jury. Think about Meadows going free despite participating in schemes to overthrow the government. And think about all the other people being pardoned, all the people who participated, all the people who knew, all the people who could testify, all protected, all above the law. That's the reality of Trump's pardon strategy. And here's what Democrats are saying about it. Democrats are saying the pardons prove that Trump is using presidential power to protect people who help him. Democrats are saying the pardons prove that Trump is trying to destroy the rule of law. Democrats are saying the pardons prove that Trump believes he and his allies are above the law. And they're right. That's exactly what the pardons prove. Some Republicans are apparently unhappy about it too. Some Republicans are apparently furious that Meadows cooperated with prosecutors. Some Republicans apparently see Meadows as a traitor for talking to investigators. Some Republicans apparently think Meadows should have stonewalled. But Trump is pardoning Meadows anyway. Trump is protecting him. Trump is saying, I don't care that you cooperated. You're on my team and I'll protect you. That's the message. So the pardon is not just about protecting Meadows. The pardon is about signaling to everyone in Trump's orbit that they're safe. The pardon is about telling future allies that Trump will protect them. The pardon is about establishing a pattern where loyalty is rewarded with presidential protection. The pardon is about using executive power to protect a loyalty network from accountability. And the pardon is about destroying the rule of law in the process. This is where we actually are. This is the state of American government. A president using the pardon power to protect everyone involved in schemes to stay in power. A president protecting his allies from prosecution. A president preventing witnesses from testifying at trial. A president making sure no one faces consequences. That's not a democracy, that's authoritarianism. That's what the rule of law looks like when it's destroyed. Stay tuned because there are going to be more pardons. There are going to be more people protected. There are going to be more instances of Trump using the pardon power to protect loyalty. And with every pardon, the rule of law erodes a little more. With every pardon, the idea that no one is above the law becomes less true. With every pardon, we move
in a big long
a little further toward authoritarianism. And that's the trajectory.
in my house in North Carolina.
Okay, she's in North Carolina. So let y'all know we kind of reach a little bit. But you want to give a little bit of your story? Don't tell the whole story because I want you taking up the whole hour.
Well, I know I don't want to take up the whole. Why don't you give the introduction?
But go ahead.
No, you do it.
No, it'd be better if you do it. I think that you can tell it better than I can.
Well, I mean, I'm probably one of the few people who do listen to your show regularly that don't look like you. You can tell I'm a white lady, an old lady.
What? I thought you was a sister.
A sister. I love New Orleans. I love your community. I love what you're doing, Gerard, and I listen to it all the time. But unfortunately, I listen to you. I found you because I don't have justice. And I just don't understand why it's so hard. In 4 years, it took me 2 years to get one security camera video in the city of New Orleans that's supposed to be the most surveilled city in the country, in the French Quarter. I only got I never got it from the police. I got it from having to do a civil trial. And I have to live in the community where two people I know are responsible for my son's death, not his own fault. People don't jump through solid glass windows on the 12th floor. But I'm 4 years later supposed to believe that. And I started out my hunt there at the FBI on Lakefront Avenue or Lakeshore Drive. And 4 years later, I still don't have anything more than, sorry, ma'am, there's nothing we can do.
So you're basically saying you talked to someone from the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
In
the beginning.
Wasn't these
January,
gentlemen, though?
Same day I went to the commander of the 8th District, which was January 25th, 2019.
So basically, if I'm telling your story, what you're saying is that your son ended outside of a window on the 12th floor. Was it the 12th floor?
It was the 12th floor.
12th floor of hotel downtown.
Mm-hmm. In a window that doesn't open.
To his death, and that window does not open.
Right.
And
the only security camera video I have is from the balcony where he landed. It doesn't show whether he went off the roof or through a window.
And you want these gentlemen to know this and do what?
I guess I want to know if there's any kind of investigation going on at all that I don't know about.
Being it happened in New Orleans, it would fall under the jurisdiction of the New Orleans Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
That would not
I've been
be
down
under
that road quite a bit.
So that would not be under the jurisdiction of the FBI.
No. Usually with state crimes.
What I was told was that the Safety and Permits Department was under FBI investigation for decades. So if I'm to believe that Seth went through a window, that is a single pane window, and it was supposedly the FBI was investigating the Safety and Permits Department for decades, you'd think that this death resulting from being in a faulty space would fall under the FBI.
Would y'all be here? Y'all wouldn't be investigating that, would you?
Yeah, I have no knowledge.
Ms. Amy,
of that.
I don't think that these gentlemen are up or aware of. I didn't know they were under investigation for decades. I think
that's